There's a major media story happening right here in Minneapolis, and that is the Star Tribune. Recently rebranded as a Minnesota Star Tribune, this is one of the only newsrooms that's actually hiring journalists in 2025. And the person in charge of that newsroom is my guest today. Kathleen Hennessy is the managing editor of the Star Tribune. It's a new role for her. She previously has worked for the Associated Press. She's interviewed Trump before. She's been in the press room with Obama. She worked for the New York Times, and now is leading the newsroom that is being a big force for change here in Minnesota. In the interview today, we get into the weeds of journalism. In fact, she kind of calls me out for being really weedsy, but isn't that like the best place to be, is the weeds? We talk about what it means to have unnamed sources, how much we should pay our journalists, and am I a journalist or am I other than that? You're going to hear all that and more in this hour with Kathleen Hennessy. Let's get started then. You can ring the bell. Let you do the honors. Not the bell, but the buzzer, and get the timer started.
And then at the end, does it really buzz?
It actually beeps. And then when it beeps, like, don't worry if we're running out of time. The point is that it's going to interrupt your point. And then it's like, oh, that's the end.
And I'm like, I'm out.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Ready?
Let's do it.
You ready?
I'm ready. Kathleen Hennessy.
Hello.
The Minnesota Star Tribune, the newly rebranded Minnesota Star Tribune's managing editor. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Why did you leave the most successful newspaper in America to come to this paper?
Oh, when you say it like that. I did it for the adventure, for the mission. I was on the politics desk. I've spent most of my career working in political journalism and editing politics most recently, and had finished a campaign year and was sort of, as all journalists get a little itchy kind of when they get through one phase. And so I was starting to look around, and when I heard about what the Star Tribune was doing and its sort of transformation and change, and I was like, ooh, I want to be part of that. It's a big change because, like, you moved across the country, which it's not the first time you've done it. You've reported in Nevada and in D.C. and New York, but like this is a special one because you're coming back home. It is. I bounced around a bit. I was in Las Vegas early in my career, spent most of my journalistic life anyway in Washington. Mm-hmm. And then actually, so I was in Washington, and I was the White House editor on the day after Trump won the 2016 election, and that for the Associated Press, and then was a deputy bureau chief through much of the Trump administration, and got to a point around 2019 where I was, again, getting a little itchy, ready for something new. And we were hiring for a politics editor who could live anywhere. Mm-hmm. And I was the one who was doing the search, and I pulled a Dick Cheney and hired myself and took the opportunity. Rest in peace, by the way. Yes, I know. He must be on my mind. Right? Yeah. So that is actually when I moved back to Minnesota. Yep. Was in 2019 with my family. I had young kids, and we were kind of ready to get out of Washington. I didn't realize that. I thought you knew. No, I know. It's a trick. So then I was here, and then the pandemic happened, and everybody was everywhere, and that's when I joined the Times. But I was able to stay. I was able to stay in Minneapolis and just work remotely. So I've been here for a little while, but not working in Minnesota media. And now you're like the public face of the newsroom. It's a new thing. One of the public faces of the organization. Anyway. Yeah. How does it work getting hired as a managing editor of a paper? Like, so the owner is, just for the people listening, the owner is the richest man in Minnesota, Glenn Taylor. The publisher is Steve Grove, and the CEO. Mm-hmm. And then you lead the newsroom on there. Which one of those people do you talk to? Is there a board you talk to when you're interviewing for the job? Do you talk to reporters? Like, I oversee the newsroom, which is all of the not all of the journalists. There's also a editorial board, which I don't meddle in any way. But and I report to Steve Grove, who's the CEO and publisher. And I work very closely with Steve. I'm also a senior vice president. I'm involved in both sort of the journalism and the larger editorial and sort of strategy for the company. Glenn Taylor, as the owner, is not involved in those things in a day-to-day way. There's a board. I have not met him in person. I have spoken on the phone with him once, and then he, there is a board. We have and he's on the board, and And so I have seen him in that context.
Yeah.
And just like any other company, you know, Steve and the executive team, you know, report up to the board and consult on major decisions and that sort of thing.
Because it's interesting, like you're coming from, the New York Times is famously like a family-owned newspaper for generations, right? And then in this case, we have a newspaper that's recently changed hands to this, a billionaire, to one of the wealthiest people in our region. Like, do you feel the difference? I know you don't have the day-to-day interaction, but is there a cultural difference with those two things?
There are a lot of cultural differences. I mean, the biggest one I'd actually say is not so much about the ownership as as sort of the difference between being part of this national institution that is very large and broad in its scope. And even though it's a New York paper, like it's not a New York.
It's the most read newspaper in California.
Yeah.
I found that out. New York
It has more subscribers in California than it does in New York, which says more about California probably. But it's big and it's global, and it's very different than to come to an institution that is very local, that people feel like they interact with it in a real way. They know the faces. You just feel closer to readers in a real way, and you hear from people more often. I mean, I've written and edited tons of stories that supposedly made big news, but I never heard from anyone, right, specifically or directly about how it affected their lives, and that is just really, really different here.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear from you about like the different things that you cover because you're a Midwestern paper. You're the largest newsroom in the upper Midwest. We're actually working on our TV show right now where we're talking about the meat industry, because there's like billion-dollar organizations, literally a block that way is Jack Links, who's a subject of one of our stories. We've got Hormel down the road from here. We also have a huge healthcare industry. Like,
headquarters economy. We're full of big companies here.
What's your observation about like the different responsibilities of a newsroom being based in this part of the country?
Well, I would say we cover. I would say this, to some degree, everywhere I've ever worked is like, well, I've worked in Las Vegas, which was a company town to some degree, right? Like the casino industry dominated, and journalistically, you poured tons of resources into covering that industry, and not just sort of what they were doing on a day-to-day basis or how, stock price or earnings, but truly like how they use their political force and power. I would say here, and I've worked in Washington, which is also a company town. I think what's interesting here is to some degree we have like a bigger mix, right? You have to like look a little more broadly. You have to understand med tech, you have to understand retail, you have to understand ag. And our biz department is really, really sharp on like a broad range of industries, has a lot of characters to cover. And we cover Target very aggressively. We cover, so there are obviously big companies, Medtronic and others that we sort of see as our like tentpole kind of parts of our coverage. Yeah. But we're constantly like looking for other stories to tell that get sort of blacked out by some of these other larger companies, and looking at the ways in which Minnesota's economy is evolving and changing, and how the business community here is leading on other parts of technology or entrepreneurship or philanthropy, right? I mean, we could do more in covering like sort of how we give our money away, which I think is fascinating, especially here, and how the sort of norms around that are changing. So it's a lot. We've just hired Allison Kaplan as who's coming to us from Twin Cities Business, TCB. She's a very deeply sourced business reporter and editor who is like really understands sort of how this economy and business community operates. And she's going to be doing
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Newsletter.
Redirect
are you
a little
dinging
bit.
The bell on me?
Yeah.
Oh God.
No, sorry. I was like, the social viewers are gone.
You're like, oh man.
No,
You told me that never happened, and we are 3 minutes.
I know, but you prompted me. I was like, I couldn't not do it.
All right, I'm going to get you back.
Please. My question, I guess what I'm really trying to understand, I had a conversation with a political operative recently. I was trying to understand this mayoral race that just finished, right? Where the mayor won his third term, the incumbent mayor. And I was confused about the amount of money that had gone through one candidate. There was an imbalance between the money that was supporting him and the PAC that supported his interests as well compared to others. And this political operative, who admittedly was kind of on the opposite side of the political tracks as the mayor, said, the thing about this place is that we aren't a company town. It's not like we're U.S. Steel in Pittsburgh or Las Vegas, to use your example, over there. And so what you have is the people who have money have a lot more influence, but that money is diffuse, right? It's decentralized. And so you have individual wealthy people able to extract more influence out of their leaders than in a place like Pittsburgh, where U.S. Steel kind of gets to be the big organization, say, no, we're doing this now. Zappos famously did so much in Vegas as well.
Oh, yeah.
Is there anything to that?
I think they're quieter about it, too, I would say.
Who are the companies or
the companies and the wealthy individuals? There's a low-key vibe throwing your weight around here politically that in other places it's just not the same. I think people here at times sort of just how they sort of are low key about lots of things. That it's you have to dig a little harder. You have to look a little closer. You have to listen and understand and be sourced in more areas to really understand, I think, how things work here. But like I said, I've never covered the Minnesota legislature. I've not covered Minnesota politics nearly as deeply as some of the people who work for me.
Yeah, you're coming in at a hell of a time. Like, this is in the year of a political assassination, of a mass shooting, of some just very dramatic things happening over here. Was the newsroom equipped to deal with those national stories? Are there things that you learned from covering those that you need to resource more, or that you found that, tell me about your experiences there?
Well, it was, as difficult and horrible as those events were, for me, coming into as an editor and coming in as a new leader of a newsroom, it was 6 months worth of sort of getting to know you in a weekend, right? By the end of the terrible Hortman shooting and the manhunt and all, I felt like I knew that newsroom really well, and I had seen some extraordinary talent. So that was an odd sort of just a really fast lesson for me. Right. I think that newsroom absolutely was equipped. It's not just the last year, right? Minnesota has been the center of national news regularly since 2020, right?
Tim Walz becoming a national figure,
right? Really. And before that, but going back to Floyd, of course. And so there are, I think they were. They do news really, really well.
So tell me about that morning with of Melissa Hortman's assassination, and her husband and the senator as well. It was a Saturday morning, and it was early morning. So I imagine it's kind of a sleepy time in a newsroom. Usually, how did you first find out about it? And then how did the newsroom kind of whip into action?
Well, I can say that because this to me is the local news stuff that's new to me, but I love it, which is that one of our editors was out golfing very early that morning on a golf course that was very near the Hoffman's house, I believe. I'm one of the site crime scenes. So he immediately saw and was called in and said, something's going on, right? So just, it's like we're close to it. We were pursuing it pretty darn early. And by the time I found out, because I got a call from Steve in the morning, very first thing, woke me up. And he, and we were already on it and trying to get sources on the record to figure out, to be able to confirm what had really happened.
Is there just stepping away from the specific story, is there an action plan for when major national news occurs like that? Do you have a standard operating procedure of all right, this is a phone tree, we're calling these people in the office, these people on this thing, or is it ad hoc every time?
It's instinctual every time, and it's sort of, for a lot of us, like, this is what you do. It's like you don't have an action plan for how you like sit down and conduct. Well, maybe you do an interview, but I mean, to some degree, it's like this is what we do. So, everybody activates. Everybody takes a look at the story and figures out, who do I need to send where, right? And who needs to know about this, and who needs to be reporting, and who should be calling, and then where's that information? How does it get flowing to the right places? The biggest thing immediately, almost always in a situation like this, is figuring out what's fact, what's real, what's confirmable, right? And there's almost always lots of rumors, and in this day and age, people posting stuff on social media, right, in extraordinary detail that you just don't know, but you can't report.
Right.
So our role in this is obviously to just like be methodical, be careful, and maybe not worry so much about being first, but as being authoritative. And so we weren't, the very first to report publicly exactly what had happened, but we waited to make sure that we had it on sources that we could trust and that we knew.
How many people are working on a story like that on a Saturday?
By the end of the day, I mean, it was, I don't know, 60 more. I mean,
really? Wow.
I couldn't even. That's a really good question.
In my head,
everything to count, but
in my head, I was thinking, oh, was it like 5 or was it 12? And it's like, oh no, it's way more than that.
Oh no, I mean, it's sort of an all hands. I mean, we would think of it as an all hands moment, right? So I wouldn't say that like all day, every single, but everybody would have checked in with their editor to say, what do you need me to do, right?
You guys are primarily a work from home office, aren't you?
We're hybrid. We're 3 days a week in the office.
Oh, okay. So in that day, is everyone in the office, or people working from home doing the same thing?
It's actually the first, for me, and I think for a lot of people, it's the first major news event where, maybe not the first, but we all went in, right? I mean, we could have done it remotely, but we didn't. It just felt easier for everyone to be in person and to.
That's where my instinct goes. Like, and that's what you need to have, this like asynchronous information exchange happening.
I don't remember, who was on the call and who wasn't. I mean, we have to be somewhat careful, and I say that as like, that's editors, right, who are running the story, but I mean, everybody else turns and runs in the other direction, right, and drives to the scene, or to the Capitol, or wherever it was. So reporters are out, but editors came in and worked the story in person, which I really appreciated.
So pretend for a moment that I'm not in this industry at all, which I'm not.
Adjacent.
In this thing, I mean, adjacent, we'll say. But like, what is the actual act of writing the story? Like, I mean, literally, is someone opening up Microsoft Word and then like attaching it? Is it like on WordPress? And what is like the editing process? Like, 'cause I'm just trying to understand in my head the balance of like, this is a major story getting out. You're trying to get the information out quickly. Mistakes can get made quickly. So like, what's the process of story gets to the website?
Well, I'd say like, actually, it's one of the things that we're changing really quickly, and I've I think pushed along fairly quickly in my time, which is, the process used to be that you'd either call in your editor, or you would sit on a phone and tap out some lines or a story, right? We are reporting. We've moved to live blogs much more quickly, so that people are able to post just bits, sort of as
let's talk about it. I'm fascinated by it. No one talks about it, but the experience is so different. I'm on the app, I click on a story, and instead of it taking me in the app to another story, like a browser window pops up in the middle of it, and then it's little, like almost like tweet like posts on there, giving updates and things, but like the user experience.
Well, that
different.
Part of it is maybe not ideal.
I mean, New York Times is the same way. They have the same thing.
Yeah, every organization. I mean, if you look around, every organization is shifting to covering live news, breaking news, or not even necessarily breaking news, but anything that's thought of as an ongoing running story in a live blog. And basically, what it is, it's a recognition that like people don't read stories the same way that they used to. Like, their attention is shorter. They're looking for headlines. They're looking to be able to scan something, and they want to be able to come back more than once, right? Especially if you know that it's something that's going on. So what we used to do was like write a story, and then when we got an update, we would like slide a sentence into that story, but no one would ever know that it was there, right? And that works for newspapers, but it doesn't work online, where you want to advertise like, hey, I just got something new. I know something new, right? So, or I've got a great photo, or I've got a video. So it takes an adjustment, and the Times has been leading on this, but lots of other, at this point, every news organization does it and has slightly different formats. But it is how people are reading, and when we go live like that, our audience grows just tremendously. People,
really?
Yeah. I mean, I think even in search and stuff, we're somewhat like the search engines kind of reward and favor that sort of constant updating.
Yeah.
So
you got to serve Google. It's really important.
Yeah, I know. Our Google.
They're really struggling over there.
I'm very fickle these days. Yes. But yeah, so we've done a lot of that, and we definitely did that on starting with the Hortman shooting.
I mean, like, I understand it from like an economics perspective. I work in the attention economy, but is it good for journalism that we've lost this like first draft of history? Everyone opens a paper in the morning and sees like the official thing.
Well, we're still doing that. Like, it's not gone, right? So then at the end of the day, somebody has to kind of take that live blog and write it into a story so that it gets in the paper.
Is there a name for that? Like the story that gets written?
Well, it's that kind of a story is called a lead-all in the business, and so there's almost like a roundup. It's a sort of everything that happened in a particular event the day before, and so we are still, we're still publishing a newspaper every day, so we have to come up with both forms.
So how many people, like, as a ratio, like how many people are
we are getting in it? This is wonky.
I
this
know.
is an audience of like
This is
only
here's my confession. This podcast is for me and me alone. Like, this is the stuff I'm really interested in.
Oh my God, I was like, what am I going to talk about? He was like, it's about lead-alls.
Yeah, lead-alls. Let's get into it. I don't get it. I don't understand. Who's reading the lead-all? That's my question. How many people, is it like more people read the blog and then no one ever reads the lead-all?
Okay, so the lead-all is primarily.
So I was going to back out.
The lead-all is for the paper. So anybody who picks up the paper in the morning, that's so like the story they're seeing.
3 people, I think, 4 now.
No. It's definitely more than
70,000 circulation print edition. I know that.
You're on it. Yeah, trust me. There are plenty. Because if we do something wrong, if we don't put something on the homepage, we hear from them.
Yeah.
Or on the front page. And then sometimes, yes, we'll put the lead-all on the website later in the day.
But you have a number in your head of how many people are reading that blog, though, versus the lead-all, and plus the print.
Absolutely.
Like, is the blog
the blogs
bigger?
will do better. Yeah.
It will. Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
It's because I think people come back more than once, right? They know that, like, okay, I took a bite, and now I'll come back again later because I might find something new, right? And it, we hope, is training people to think of us in that way, right? That, like, we're not like check it in the morning and, see you again tomorrow, but check again later. Like, we're constantly updating our site with new material. Yeah.
All right. So we'll choose your own adventure here. Do we want to keep going wonky or I can go personal? Which way do you want to go?
Oh God.
Yeah,
Is there
choose.
a third
Nope,
option
that's it.
somewhere?
I'm a hard-hitting journalist.
Do I get to ask you about what you do?
Oh, sure, go for it. But now I've already, you can't back out of the question that way. You gotta choose one.
I mean, what's more interesting?
The personal one, probably.
All right, go personal.
Your dad was the mayor of St. Paul.
Not my dad, my grandfather.
Your grandfather?
No, my dad probably would have loved to be the mayor of St. Paul.
Okay, sorry.
Okay.
Your grandfather was the mayor of St. Paul.
My grandfather was the mayor of St. Paul.
1966 to 1970.
Yes.
And something that just really struck me, I was reading about him. Tom Byrne, great Irish name. We got a lot of Irish names coming here. You're a Hennessy, he's a Byrne. But one of the issues that he dealt with is that in 1968, the Minneapolis and the St. Paul police acquired AR-15s. And it's a huge civil rights kerfuffle because this is the era of the Black Panthers, of Martin Luther King, of Malcolm X. And so a lot of civil rights activists protested both mayors of the cities, and your grandfather had a sit-in of protesters saying, you got to take these AR-15s away.
I know.
And now, a half century later, you are presiding over a newsroom that is dealing with the fallout of a shooter with a assault rifle murdering children. And this is a city right now that is grappling with legislation to change that. And that, like, generational echo is, like, kind of remarkable. Is that something you've thought about at all?
I mean, I am shocked that you did that amount of research. That's impressive. I mean, sometimes I think about it, or I have at times been like, oh, wouldn't it be interesting? My grandfather's no longer alive, but to go back and, like, really report out that episode and its and the sort of long tail there. It was certainly a different time on lots of levels. The story that we always heard about that episode was that he had these protesters the sit-in in his office, and because he was who he was, he made sure that he brought them coffee and donuts every morning. That was his, and he was absolutely in his core a consensus builder who respected, protest and differing opinions, and always tried to find some sort of middle ground. But ultimately, he gave the police what they were asking for at the time. I think on some level, it's just the arc of where I'm not at all surprised that we are in a totally different place on guns and gun ownership and gun restriction in not we, but the city is in this very liberal city, given everything that's happened between
I had the opposite. My reaction was, it's not in the same place. We're in the same place. Like,
you think?
Because, the result of the decision there was like the police are going to have these assault rifles over here. And now we have this era where we're dealing with militarization of police, or what is the role of police now? Now we're talking about whether we should have gun bans in the city. It's just interesting to me that like it's this perennial issue of like the role of not just gun rights, but like a certain kind of gun that we're still talking about.
Talking about. I guess I was thinking sort of in terms of, he was a Democratic politician, right? And it is a lot harder to imagine a Democrat in either St. Paul or Minneapolis at this point probably doing what he did then. But a lot has happened in between. I think that the arc of gun ownership and our relationships to guns and the impact of school shootings and how that shifts how a good chunk of this country thinks about being armed. I mean, that is sort of one of the stories of my lifetime, quite honestly.
Yeah.
And I don't know a journalist who hasn't had to cover a school shooting in one way or the other. And I don't know anybody who doesn't think about it on a regular basis if you've got kids in school or any kind of, right? I mean, now it's just part of our lives. And I mean, for certain, it wasn't not in that way.
The coverage that you guys did was remarkable. In particular, I think that I don't know the name of the photojournalist who had the picture of the parents running with their shoes up. What's the name?
Rich Song Tatari.
Yep.
The photo of the mother running.
Her back to the camera, like towards the school. Her shoes off. Took her shoes off to run faster. Like that to me, that's like photo of the decade sort of thing. Like it was. It gives you shivers just looking at this thing.
I know. It. I mean, from the minute we saw it, it was a sort of stop in your tracks and just immediately identify, right? I mean, that's the power of photos like that, when you can just suddenly put yourself in that picture, and it's not even an image, it's just pure emotion, right?
Right.
And I think we all knew that immediately, and it's sort of interesting that we've not identified them. It's not a person that you can't see her face, you don't and I almost think that helps, right? It's like you see her from behind, so you really do
project your own self. I protect myself. I have young kids, and I projected myself onto that parents.
I mean, right? That's what you do. You take off your shoes and you run as fast as you can. Yeah, it was the photography on all of these. We have extraordinary photographers at the Star Tribune, but particularly at Annunciation, just because we were there very early and first, and it was happening outside, and just we captured some really painful moments, but also things that images that will stick with people. And
this is this place that so both of us have the same story of being prodigal children of this place, right? So
right.
we've come back in recent times, and something that I've observed about this is it's not a place that loves to talk about uncomfortable things. Maybe it's a Scandinavian background. I don't know, but I think that's something that happened with George Floyd. And I kind of think when I look at, I'm profoundly affected by Annunciation, even though I'm not personally affected by it. Just the fact that it happened in my neighborhood, and I feel like a lot of this city has brushed under the rug, moved on. The people in my community, in my neighborhood haven't, but it just feels like another one of those stories that we pass by. And to me, it's like, I feel like I'm constantly shaking my fist at this guy. Like, why aren't we all talking about this every single day? And that's maybe my perspective living in Kingfield, but.
I think that's what people feel. I mean, I just have to, like, I've covered a lot of school shootings as a national reporter. Sometimes you feel like you're just, I mean, not that I've had to rush to the school, but especially I covered the White House for a long time. And so you could almost mark time as sort of like in between big statements and moments and trips to go visit. And it is, it's shocking how quickly the whole country has moved on, right? I mean, we just don't dwell in it. And I do think there's something about that's because of the political stalemate on the issue. I mean, there is a feeling that like, well, you know, if people, what's next? And it's like, well, maybe nothing, right? Maybe nothing. It does feel like there's just no movement on policy solutions that
everyone agrees should happen.
Everyone,
like,
not everyone agrees it should happen.
80% of Americans think that there should be some sort of restrictions on high capacity firearms, I believe is a statistic. It's like everyone agrees that this is not a thing that should happen regularly, whether it's about firearms or not.
Of course.
Everyone agrees this.
Right.
And then everyone just kind of squints their eyes really hard and then tries to just get enough distance from it and move on. It's like my perspective on it. And it just, it's madness to me. Yeah.
It's certainly, I think that the political stalemate encourages people to just look elsewhere, move on, right? Because you kind of know nothing will happen in that space. So I just have to go turn in another way. And I don't know, that won't happen. I'm not predicting the future, but that certainly is what the last 10 years or so has felt like on that front.
Can I tell you about my morning for that? Because I had this weird thing. I was in a meeting just unrelated, and a friend in the meeting, it was like, oh my God, my phone's like blowing up. You should see what's on the news. And they said, are you going to go cover this for your channel for 1 minute tours?
Yeah.
I started to do this thing. I went out and covered some of the Melissa Hortman stuff after in the trial on a Monday. And I thought, no, that's not my thing. I don't do that. That's too much like for me. And then I went about my day, and I had a walking tour that I give tours as well. Yeah. So I started driving to the walking tour, and I just was processing it and trying to figure out. I on the way out the door, I'd seen Fox 9 had a live coverage. They had the anchors there, and they had the image of the parents being reunited with their kids, and it just like it broke me. Yeah. But I pushed it down. I started driving, and I called my mom because I feel like it's what I do sometimes. And I started telling her what had happened, and I got to half a sentence, and I burst into tears. And I called my colleague and said, you got to call off this tour. I can't give this tour right now. And I turned around and I drove to the site. I drove to the school because I'm like, I guess I'm going to do 1 minute tours coverage on there.
I remember I remember these pieces that you did.
They were
really, very raw.
They were.
Yeah.
I felt really conflicted about being there. But then like there's this weird thing about being there because you had all these reporters, and there's this strange bit of the biggest tragedies lead to a weird high school reunion of the media that's there, right? Because like you have Telemundo there, you have like the all the journalists together, like, oh hey, what's up, and they're grabbing coffees and all this, and there's just because that's the nature of being a journalist, right? You have to talk about these things with a little bit of separation that was in there. Yeah. And then I was just from down the road, and I felt like an interloper. At the same time, I felt like the more qualified person to be there than some of the national media who was there.
Well, that's really true. Yeah.
And so that was like I didn't know how to feel about it. And I got accusations in my comments for being someone who was like trying to exploit this sort of thing, and that felt wrong to me because all these journalists were here. I don't know how to feel about it.
Well, you're bringing up a lot of different things. I mean, one is the sort of the blurring line between what you're doing and journalism, and but also the power of authenticity, right? Versus what journalists have to do often, which is to not like. I mean, you really can't do this job if you are going to feel every single one of those things in the moment. You have to find a way to look at it, put your own personal emotions and self sort of in the back, and be out there listening, right, and doing the work. And it's the same, and that takes training, right? And so those people that you saw that maybe looked a little like casual or callous or whatever, like some of that's just like, that's their training, especially folks who are, national media where they hop from these event to event like this sometimes, right? But I also think there's power in what you were doing, right? Which was being yourself and being real on camera and feeling the feeling in real time. And people are going to either respond to that, as so many people do for you, or they're, going to question it and be skeptical, and you have to sort of move on, right? But, I think we have, as I'm sure maybe, we have in our profession things to learn from you and what you're doing and why people enjoy what you're putting out in the world and wanting to wanting to consume it and coming back because it feels real to them.
Is this the question you wanted to ask me?
Yeah, maybe.
For the question. Is this what you were getting at?
Well, it is interesting. Because I guess I think like you already said you don't think of yourself as a journalist necessarily, right? But you've sort of acknowledged that you've like moved into this space a little bit.
I take the hat off and on when I feel like it. You know what I mean? When I'm like trying to reach a politician to come on a podcast, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a journalist on there, and I'm like trying. I haven't quite figured out the consistent line. And I kind of wear the outfit that suits the situation best in a given day.
Right. That's tricky. That's tricky for us, right? Because we don't take the hat off. Yeah. And also, we do think of what we do as different. It is different, right?
Yeah, say more.
Yeah.
Say more. How is it different? How is, you said what was the sentence you said, I bumped on? You said, what you're doing is interesting and what we're doing is different as journalists. What is the difference?
How is it different?
I think I know what it is, but I'd like to hear you say it.
Well, I say this over and over. The most important thing is independence, right? We pride ourselves on being independent. Glenn Taylor doesn't tell us what to cover. We are not like beholden to any cause or to any party or any particular political view. Like we're here to just tell the stories, right? And we have to guard that independence in a real way, and sometimes in a really practical way. So like, I don't know, we don't let politicians pay for our lunch, and when we review restaurants, we pay our own way, and that's not a small thing, but I do think it's something that a lot of people don't appreciate or understand, especially in the new media environment where they're sort of scrolling through voices and there's kind of this, everybody looks the same and feels like maybe they're all doing the same thing. There are a lot of people out on social media who are talking about restaurants or talking about politics or talking about whatever, who you don't really, they're not independent. You don't know who's paying their way or whether or not they're being paid to say what they're saying. Some of them disclose it and some of them don't. So that's our biggest,
let's debate then. Can we debate?
Yeah, sure.
Because the restaurants advertise in your newspaper, right?
Yeah, but we're not involved in asking them to advertise in any way.
The structure of the paper, it's like the idea of independence is a shifting one, right? I think that independence maybe, or I guess authenticity is maybe the better word, or trust. Trust is probably the right word I'm looking for here.
Well, they're all different things, I would say. I think we can be authentic and real and communicate with readers on that level, and learn things from you on that front, right? Which is just like how to just be human, right?
Yeah.
And be a little more relaxed and maybe not like talk in the local TV voice.
Talk about that.
You know what I mean?
The Cronkite voice. Cronkite voice that people do. Like the traditional media is so bad at new media, and I don't understand it. Just in terms of like,
I know.
They feel like they're in the space.
Everybody is learning. I think everybody is learning, like in real time.
Yeah.
And it is not always pretty.
Yeah.
And that's okay. That is also authentic. But yeah, no. I mean, certainly, and I'm not in television. I don't pretend to know, and I would never like coach any TV reporters on how to do their job. But certainly they were taught a certain style and sort of cadence, and
I think it's
that
more,
was sort of like, I am the authority here, right?
Yep. Authoritative voice.
Yeah.
But here's my contention. I think the authoritative voice comes from the independence that you talk about. It has a consequence as well, and the structure and the editing, like the needing to go through multiple layers of editing. There's a benefit to that, and something that Chris, my producer, and I, we're finding right now is like
everybody needs an editor.
Well, and this week, like we needed an attorney to talk to about a question that we're worried about, something that we're going to publish, and it's like, oh man, it'd be great if we had a newsroom and a legal team and that sort of thing, but we don't. But what we get in exchange for that is this. I mean, the independence thing is like an interesting way to think about it for me, because I put out what I'm thinking or feeling on the day, and then I deal with the consequence in the audience reaction on it, and that's the end of it. And I think that the nature of, it's not television to me, it's the nature of being a cog in a bigger machine that has a boss to report to, and you have your income, and even just the nature of being an employee.
Yeah.
All those things make someone not as good, in my experience,
on
at social, because they can't be authentic. They can't be as authentic because they're worried about, oh, is my boss going to like that? They told me to get this other thing, or is that in our style guide?
I think that's the evolution that we're going, is how to be an individual and still represent the organization well, right? And I think there are lots of journalists doing this on a regular basis. I don't think it's like unheard of, but I think it's a trick that a skill that a lot of people are learning in real time on the job. I think independence is different. Independence is about, are you honest and upfront about like why you're saying what you're saying, where your information is coming from, and I think. And like that you are a reporter reporting facts, right? And that to me is, you can do that in any style you want. You can, do that in a Mickey Mouse voice if you want to. It doesn't matter, but like you have to be saying the words and mean them, and it has to be real. But I think that's where I think like what we're all learning as journalists in this new age is figuring out what is the, how to be myself, how to be real, how to speak candidly and also accurately and truthfully, and convey new information in a way that grabs people, and how to just not always feel like everything has to be a 1,000-word story, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're dealing with people and trying to attract audience that doesn't read, they just don't read stories, not in the way that these generations have.
In terms of like where your vision goes for the newsroom, how much of the audience do you think is consuming your content, say 5 years from now, by reading something versus listening to something versus watching something versus going to a live events, which is another thing that's pursuing in the business side? I
mean, I haven't thought about percentages in that way, but I mean, without a doubt, we are preparing and moving and trying to like give people more ways to consume the content and make sure that like we don't just write a story and then say like, oh, we're done with that, or we don't immediately come to a new fact or an idea and say, well, that'll be a story first and then it'll be a social post, and but that like maybe it's a social post first, right? And maybe there is no story. So I think the mix is changing really quickly. I think like it becomes a matter of how quickly can you evolve and adapt your platforms and the technology we're using to sort of make sure that we can distribute and display all of this.
Is podcast
audio is really important to us. We're trying to figure it out, but it's hard to do all of the things all at once.
You had there's a prestige podcast that came out last year that you did in collaboration with Lemonada. Is that
Yep.
company?
Ghost of a Chance.
Yep, and it was fantastic. Highly recommended podcast. And
we have a bonus episode coming out.
Oh,
soon.
really?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
And so just to put some context around it, it's a podcast about one of your reporters who lived in a home, and he went into a deep dive of someone who'd lived there about 100 years before,
and really tells the whole story of redlining and segregation.
Yeah, he uses his home as like a totem for this whole era of segregation in the Twin Cities. It's a great piece.
It's fantastic.
But Lemonada was part of the production of it. So like, tell me about that relationship.
And this was before I came on, but it was a great relationship. I mean, Lemonada is this fantastic, nationally known podcasting company that has a lot of great experience and a lot of reach. And they came in, I think actually more toward the end of the process to help us distribute it, right? And distribution is a big
so they weren't
part of
involved
this
with the
play.
creative.
I think maybe only on the tail end.
Well,
Again,
we can skip that. You weren't there yet.
I don't want to speak to Lemonado is a
now
fabulous
with
partner.
audio, stuff that's planned in the future.
Yeah.
Do you see making audio content as something that is done fully in-house or partnering with third parties who are particularly good at that?
I think we're trying to do it in-house.
Yeah.
Right now, the next project we're doing is in-house, and we are, we have a daily sports podcast, Brand Ball, that is completely produced mostly by one amazing journalist, in his house from 6 a.m. to 9.
Yeah.
So I mean, we can be scrappy on this,
Yeah.
and we are trying to be we're trying to not overproduce everything, but also do what we do well. So for the moment, we're looking for outside help, and we're constantly consulting and advising, but we're gonna try to do it on our own for now.
My feeling about it, if I can be so bold,
Please be so bold,
is that you can't expect people who are traditionally trained print journalists to suddenly become really good audio creators or video creators, and that you're gonna have to hire in people who kind of do what I do in terms of the social video stuff, or do what Lemonada does in there, and that has to become part of the brand because print is getting de-emphasized. It seems like when I look at
I think that's right, but I also think how did you learn to do what you do?
I was a tour guide for a number of years, so I had to just go do that and be out in the field and learn. But also the video content came as a natural outcropping of something that I found a strong interest in, was really good at. It wasn't like I'd had someone tell me, hey, you did this written piece, go do a video piece right now,
right.
Which is, I feel like, how some newsrooms do it.
Yeah.
And that's where I think they fall down, is not finding someone who's natively talented at that medium.
I think more and more people are natively talented in multiple, right? I mean, just we're all, and younger people are creating video from the, birth, as far as I can tell. So I think that problem is kind of resolving itself. And I think it's okay for us to do something, learn on the job, and to do some things that aren't super polished. But also, Minnesota is an audio hub, and we have a lot of journalists in our newsroom who used to work at NPR or other public radio. So we've got a lot of people with skills. Not the hard thing, but what we would probably have to still look outside for is some technical production things. But and
these guys are expensive over here.
These guys are expensive. I know. Look how hard he's working. That looks really hard.
Come on, Chris. I need to get you a mic soon so you can actually defend yourself.
Not answering. Yeah.
How much do you pay your journalists?
How much do we pay them?
Yeah.
You want an average salary?
Or range, whatever you choose.
We pay them as well as we can. People don't get into journalism because they want to be millionaires. And, but.
It's like $50K, $100K, $200K?
I'm not going to tell you what people make.
My point
I appreciate the ballsy question, to be honest, but yeah. I wish I could pay them more. I wish we. Yeah. I wish we could pay them more. They're worth.
Actually, this is a serious question. Do you decide how much journalists make, or does the union decide it? Because you have one of the oldest newsrooms.
We are a union. Yeah, a union shop, and there's a pay scale, and there's some flexibility within that.
Where I'm getting to with the question, the thing I'm interested in exploring is that back when I used to work at the Mankato Free Press, I was in high school. I did this.
Okay, so you have it somewhere.
Do you know I used to work at the Star Tribune?
No, I didn't know that.
Back in 2009, I was in digital media in Portland Avenue in the old building before they tore it down, a beautiful Art Deco.
What did that mean in 2009?
I read Omniture Suite reports, and I talked about what there was a new Vikings microsite that we're working on that I did. Okay. And then every day I would go up and walk through the newsroom and try to get Terry Sauer to look at me. And then I got to work a little bit with the video team. I worked with people who have moved on since. assistants, like Jenny over there or Tom Horgan. And I actually worked on a few video pieces, but I was a freelancer. I was outside. I was a contractor.
Okay.
So I was just there really quickly, but I was so in love with it. Like I was just like, I'm like a news geek, as you probably figured out these questions.
Love it. Love it.
So no, I worked at Star Tribune, and then at the Free Press, I was in reader services. So I was in circulation, and I would measure the column inches, and I had to like do the ABC report, which would say like how much is editorial versus advertising in there. And so my point of my question of how much do you pay your journalists is it used to be that you would take the total number of dollars that you pay your journalists, and you could probably divide up the number of column inches that were written, and then be able to compare that against the advertising dollars that came in, and that's what makes the business, at least at the Steve Grove level, at the publisher level.
Okay.
Now,
we're not. I don't think we're.
No, you're far from that. But I mean, it's disintermediated, to use a big word. Is you're separated from every dollar that you pay someone who makes content. It's harder to figure out how the business side of it is working, especially if you're trying to figure out podcasts and video and other platforms like TikTok. You can't monetize TikTok the way that you can your own site. So like, how do you make those decisions? How do you make the decision to pay a higher salary to a superstar reporter or to bring on 5 new journalists? How do you think about that?
That's interesting. Well, I'm going to answer your question in a different way because I'm not going to tell you what we pay people. But I would say that we know more data about how people consume what we do and like how far into a story they read, how many seconds did they spend with it, right? And down to what stories did they read before they decided to finally take out their wallet and pay for a subscription, right? And we are like tracking and watching that every single day, right? So we don't attach this to like specific reporters necessarily, but we look at beats and content, like various subject matter and say like, oh, okay, like people we say converts, like this is something that not just do they read it, but they pay for this, right? And we are constantly looking for like the difference between, we have some subject matter, like some things that are people who are already subscribed, they gobble it up and they read like, 4 articles a day on that subject, but it's not growing. It's not something that converts, right? So we're constantly like looking at that sort of data to see how do we shift resources, what do we leave behind, how do we add more to something, it's a different game now, I think. I mean, it's a very different game, obviously, just compared to newspapers where you plop it on their doorstep and say like, thanks, right?
I think you're the only newsroom that's actually been hiring recently in this region, which is
not the only, but we've been really lucky to be able to.
There's an incredible atrophy across the media. Like there's all this conglomeration happening. I mean, Care 11 did a bunch of layoffs recently. The Mankato newsroom shuttered, and like you guys are seemingly able to gobble up some of the talents over there. And so that's the core of my question is like, how do you think about what you spend on your newsroom? And before you answer that, kind of related question, like, are you sending reporters to the Olympics, the Winter Olympics?
No.
Okay. But you have sent reporters internationally for other stories, right? You've done big stories.
We have occasionally, but we make choices,
and
right?
you have reporters who are in DC. There are
2 reporters based in DC.
So you have reporters that you spend a premium on to make sure that they're getting these sorts of stories. And in some cases, you have to decide to invest something because it's prestige journalism that benefits the brand. But does that always Does it always have a dollar figure attached? Yeah, or like, do you think at the start of the year, like, all right, we're going to set this much money aside to do the really ambitious stuff over here?
Yeah. Well, okay. The good thing is that one of the great things that I found out when I got in here is that like I'm not having to make those super hard choices between like, do I spend on like poppy, fizzy sort of SEO clickbait type stuff, or do I spend on scoops and exclusives, right? Like, I have been delighted to find out that the stuff that converts, right, the stuff that people pay for, that get out their wallet for, is our best work, like without a doubt. And so, like, our business strategy and our sort of journalistic ambitions are really aligned in that way, and that's awesome, right? And I'm not surprised to learn that, but it sure is a relief, right? Like, this is a sophisticated market. There are really good readers here. People want high quality content, and they want to come to the site every day and find something that they're not seeing anywhere else. And that's what we're going to give them, and that's what they'll pay for, which is great.
Something I've noticed recently as I've read a lot of the reporting is that You've got a lot of good scoops on the governor's office. You know, this governor. There's a scoop about the internal fighting between his lieutenant governor and he.
Yeah.
There was
Can't take credit for that one. That was before my time. It was good.
There's another one about his reticence to run for a third term and whether he would do it or not. How it set off a bit of a scramble in the party about like, oh, who's going to run if he doesn't? He ultimately decided to run. A lot of those stories also used unnamed sources in doing it, and it's something I don't remember reading 15 years ago in the Star Tribune, unnamed sources. Is that something that how do you think about when to use an unnamed source and when not to?
Without a doubt, like there are stories you can't get to unless you agree to give someone anonymity. I care a lot about being really close to power and understanding power. I mean, maybe this does sort of come from my background in Washington, but I want us to understand like what's happening in the room. I just don't think you can really do that reporting unless you're willing to give anonymity. We are very careful with it. We always try to explain a reason for anonymity. We're not just sort of giving it willy-nilly, and we don't give it to someone to like take a shot at somebody else or to, like as much as possible. It's like supposed to, ground fact-based reporting, not somebody's opinion always, right? So we're careful. It takes extra approval. You have to like go up a step to have a manager. Editors know who the anonymous source is. These aren't just like random people that reporters are not disclosing. So we take care. Do
you ever choose not to do a story because it's not a good enough story to have an unnamed source in?
Yeah. I mean, it has to be worth it. I mean, and also it has to be corroborated. Like we very rarely hang something on a single anonymous source unless it's a golden source.
The governor thinking about not running for a third term, like that was a bit of an open secret. Like I'd heard it 2 weeks before.
I mean, to be totally clear, I think the Reformer had that.
They broke that?
Maybe, or bits of it. It was, we were all chasing the same story, but they were
That's
ahead,
it.
I think.
We're all chasing the same story because all of us were hearing it. Like I heard it and I'm not even a journalist, right? And
so you say, yes.
So 2 weeks after when the story came out, 2 weeks after at least when I had heard about it, it was like cause for discussion about this thing in an open setting, which was probably good for democracy and for the city and the state.
Right? I don't believe in open secrets.
Yeah.
I mean, no secrets, period. That we ought to report it. I mean, I think it's dangerous when sometimes you hear from reporters like, oh, well, everybody kind of knows that. And I'm like, well, why haven't we written? I mean, write it. Like, sometimes you can fall into the trap of thinking that something isn't news, right? Because it's sort of just chatter. And I think like there are great stories in sort of containing a conversation in a story and capturing what people are talking about, right?
But then it went like even further than I had seen before was with the Andy Manock story about the text chain that included Pete Hegseth, the Minnesotan Secretary of War, we're calling it now, and that was like there were multiple paragraphs in there, kind of explaining how the story was gotten and what you were willing to share with us as a newsroom and what you were not. What you were not willing to share with us was significant, right? You weren't willing to share where it happened or how it was gathered or who the person was or the nature of. There's like a number of things that were in there.
Well, but those were the terms we agreed to with the source. Right? Yeah.
But there's also terms that you agree to with the audience, right? And so like there must be another part of it of like, ooh, how far are we going to go with anonymizing this versus not? Like, what were those conversations like?
Yeah. Well, there were many, and they involved lawyers, as you expected. So yeah, I mean, that was a story that we deemed to have like a public service value, to have news value, to like, tell readers something that they ought to know on a few different levels. I mean, it was an unusual story for us. That's not the kind of thing that like drops.
Can you summarize? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
So it was the story was that a Trump administration official who was happened to be in Minnesota, the White House told us later, was texting in a public place and was seen texting, and someone who saw the texts took photos and relayed them to us. And so there was a whole bunch of sort of tidbits. This is right before Trump was talking about bringing troops into Portland at the time, and he was talking about bringing the 81st Airborne. I mean, they were discussing that in the text. Ultimately, that didn't happen, but it was revealing in the way that they were talking about using the military.
And it wasn't just one text. There was multiple. There was clearly a source of giving you lots of
information. Yeah.
Stuff.
Yeah. So we did the unusual. I mean, it was an unusual story that we thought took some, called for some unusual sort of exposition and explanatory kind of stories about like what we know about this and how we did it. So we did we did the story, one big long story, but we also did a separate story. It's just like, here's how we reported it, how we thought it through, which is the kind of thing we would not have done maybe 5 or 10 years ago, but we're mindful that people are skeptical and also just curious about
that other story, the side story of how it made.
Yeah, that people like that as much as they liked the story.
That created to me a whole other story I was creating. I was like, I'm trying to figure out what was the setting over here. Was it a bar? Was it this sort of events? And like it was titillating, right? It was Chris and I have been talking a lot about the Streisand effect this week. There were Barbara Streisand, told a newspaper they couldn't publish a picture of her house. Then everyone looked at the picture of her house.
See is the house,
and so that was me reading the story. It's like the story was, interesting and newsworthy, but I don't think it's probably going to be at the year-end list of most impactful stories in the country, right? But the news gathering by this local town paper that in a story that was nationally relevant, that was something else. You know what I mean?
Well, it's good. I mean, I think it's okay for us every once in a while to like peel back the curtain and talk about how we do what we do, right?
Yeah.
And hope that people find it interesting and hope that people see it as like, recognize that as different than what you do, right? Or than what other people on the internet do. Right.
I was laughing at my genius, my next question, which is I'm so subtle and humble about it all. But have you ever been sued by a presidential administration before?
Me personally?
Or have you been party to a lawsuit?
Have I been I have, I'm thinking. I have not been party to a lawsuit. I've been threatened with lots.
So are you excited for it then?
We have not been sued.
Because that's the thing. Like Pete Hegseth, this like very prominent member of the administration, he's Minnesotan, and you have to. I mean, I'm assuming your journalists have gone to and looked at the yearbooks of his high school and tried to contact people and find stories in there. Like, there's got to be a lot of mining for content about this very significant member of the administration.
We're doing a lot of reporting all the time, and it is a different environment on this. I guess if you're talking about threats of legal action or in sort of like the libel climate, it's more intense than it's ever been, certainly in my career. And we think more. We haven't like held anything back for that reason, and that story shows that. But we do think more and have to be a little more strategic and prepared for like, okay, if we write this, then what are we? Do we have a strategy for how we explain why we write it and what would the legal strategy be? I mean, you just have to. The Star Tribune the White House hasn't reached down to file a lawsuit against the Star Tribune, but that doesn't mean that they wouldn't someday. And
have you interviewed presidents? Yep. Obama.
I interviewed. I've asked. I was in the White House press corps, so I asked Obama a question often, but I didn't have a sit down with him. Yeah. No. Yep. I've interviewed Trump before he was president, though.
Oh, really?
In Las Vegas.
What sort of subject is he?
He is who he is. You can see who he is. He's the same everywhere. He was talking about a condo that he was selling, and he was very promotional. And we're done.
Nope, that's it. Sorry. Well, hey, thank you for being willing to come on the New Media train. I appreciate it. Kathleen Hennessy with the Minnesota Star Tribune, which you didn't even ask about the rebrand. I should have asked about that. Darn. Next hour.
The next hour.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I really appreciate the invitation. Thanks.
Oh, that's fun.